So that's really important, that we don't only talk about parent participation, we should be talking about parent and family participation. Because when we do, I mean, it should be for any child, right? But when we're specifically talking about students with disabilities, it impacts the whole family, right? I mean, any behavior of any child at any point impacts the whole family in some ways or another. But it's very important that we define what parent participation means. Because we tend to say, oh, we want our parents involved. But what happens when the parent is overly involved in the school? Do we want? Yeah, we don't want that helicopter parent running around, right? And we have some parents there that never leave us alone, and then you have parents that don't come to the school. But I think one of the things that oftentimes parent participation really comes down to participating in the PTA. And what does a PTA, what's their main goal in life? Parent-teacher education cooperation. Is it?
That's the mission statement.
Okay, that's a mission statement. What's the reality behind it?
We do a lot of money raising.
It's all about fundraising, right? So parent participation basically becomes financial support to the school, right? So as new teachers, one of the things that's very important that you think about, regardless of the role that you play, is that you define what it is that parent participation is. I mean, now, like my daughter, when she comes home from high school, basically I sign off all those little forms, you know. Have I read any of them? No. I'm sorry. I mean, and it's not that I'm sorry, it's just that I have not read anything new that's not saying, if your child doesn't come to school, you're going to get an X, and if you don't do this, you know, but there's nothing about it that says, could you please, you know, do this, or can you check? And maybe by the time we get to high school, we're assuming the kids can do most of the work on their own. Now, the other reality is that, do I have to be her teacher at home? You know, am I there to support? Yes, making sure that they sit down and that they do their homework and that's it. I've just been reading a book about parent participation in a huge study that was conducted between schools in Portugal, and it was like a Sloan Foundation, so it was a huge project that was international. And they were really careful about picking families that had similar SES structures in a system that's pretty prescriptive and so on. And basically they found that parent participation took on all sorts of meanings. Homework was important, and parents had different roles in how they did it. But I don't know if we'll ever get to one definition of what it is, but I do think it's important that you personally think about it, and if you want parents to do certain things, that you're very clear about it when you send those letters home to parents. You know, what does it mean? You know, are the kids going to get, if they don't bring their homework back, is that going to be a punishment for them? Or does it matter if it's right or wrong? Is it the effort that they go through? That's all that you want to talk, you know. Okay. So what, and is just asking mom to help them, would that be the best way to go about it? How could you enhance that? Yeah. You know, I mean, yes, I think as parents we know more about our kids and we know how they behave at home, but our kids don't come with a little manual when they're born, right? We wish they did. and if they did, they'd probably be 10 pages ahead of us anyway, so by the time we figured them out, they'd already be doing something else. I know as parents, we don't always have the answers for our own kids, right? And I think if you gave them some strategies or some suggestions, they'd probably welcome that, okay? Because he's probably not just disorganized in school, he's probably disorganized in everything else he does in life, right? Because again, their life doesn't happen in a vacuum. So maybe giving her some strategies and saying, you know, this is what we've discussed, and I'm not going to, you know, for 6 weeks, we're going to track how many times he turns in his homework, and if he does it, you know, X out of how many times, then that's going to be given, you know, some recognition to the work that he's done. So that you're turning it around and not just blaming the child for not doing that. Going back to the whole special ed process, special ed is very technical. If I gave you a list of acronyms, you'd probably be like, what? So we call it SPEDES. And I mean, it's not uncommon that in any professional field in the U.S., many of you that are coming from other fields, there's a lot of acronyms that you use that are very specific. And if you don't know what they mean, they have no, then you're lost within the system. The same things happens with special ed. So I can say, well, we're going to have an ARD and we're going to discuss the LRE and we're going to develop the IEP, and and by the time you're done, you've gone through the whole alphabet and you have no ideas of what I've talked about, unless we're on the same page, right? So parents are often left out. So we have to be careful of how we use that terminology to make it more, understandable. And not only to parents, but to you all as fellow peers, right? If you have a special ed background, you've kind of become familiar with that terminology. But when you have other teachers that are coming in, you have the art teacher coming in and all of a sudden you start throwing these XYZs and IEPs and ARDs, you're like, what is this? So you can feel just as lost there as well. So just remember that the language behind everything needs to be brought to light.